Okay, today I saw on the internet how to make rings out of quarters, and I got into it, and I made a few adjustments on a lot of the stuff that I saw. But here's the equipment that you need really to make a ring: plastic hammer, a couple of files, a mandrel which I purchased on Amazon, a 9-hole punch. You can drill them, but the punch works better. I got that at Harbor Freight along with the hammer. I had a dapping block, which if you want your rings rounded, the smaller size, you need a dapping block. And then I have a heat torch to heat it, and a few small tools, but we'll get into that. I made this board, which is solid oak, and it's good for pounding on, and you'll see, especially for the larger size rings, I'll use that. I have a Dremel with a buffing pad to shine them up. And that's what I'll use to make this ring. Out of a quarter. The first thing we have is a quarter. This one happens to be Maryland. Some of the rings are prettier than others as far as design. Georgia, Nevada, and Maryland have a small flowers around the edge or leaves around the edge, which make a nice ring. So we're going to punch one out and start from there. Okay, I've got a Maryland ring, and I'm going to put it in the punch. The secret here is to line that ring up, that quarter up perfectly, and you always we want to put the side down that it will be the face of the ring. So I have a face up. I've found that I've tried numerous ways to line this up, and the best way I've found so far is just to eyeball it. I'm using a 7/16 too. Then you do have to have a big hammer for this. You got to have a good anvil, and I'm really going to whack it. That's through. You can drill these out, but it's very messy. And what happens if you try to hold the edge of the coin while you're drilling? You chew it up. So that makes for bad business. Okay, we're ready to continue on. Here's what it's done. There's the hole, and you can see it's pretty well centered, so it's going to turn into a fairly nice ring. And here's the face part that will show with the little leaves on the side. One thing I've discovered is that the quarter on the outside edge has a ridge on the top, a ridge on the bottom, which makes it thicker. So if you don't get rid of that ridge, it will make the ring lopsided when you try to smooth it up. There's a 7/16 hole, that's the punch we use, and this is a 7/16 bolt. This is one thing that, rather than do this by hand, I'm going to put it in the drill press and file it off that way. I'm going to take the outer edge off of the top and the bottom of this quarter. You have to be careful on the top. If you go too far, it will cut into the words on the quarter. So we'll take it a slight angle and slowly work it off. This does a much neater job than if you do it by hand, and it eliminates a whole lot of sanding. I think the top is getting pretty close. I'm going to take the bottom off now. I don't have to be quite as particular with the bottom because I just want the stuff off. Now both of these files, this is a finer's file. They're both fine, but this one's finer yet. After I run so long, I'll check it out and see how it looks. Alright, I almost have the ridge off here, but not quite, so I'm going to run it just a little bit more with the fine file. Then I have some this is 1200 grit paper. It's very smooth, takes off very little, but it puts a high polish on the copper that is showing. And now we'll have to check it. I'll have to check it, see how it looks before we go. Okay, I've got the bottom ridge cut off, and the top ridge it's off too, so it looks pretty good. All right, we're going back to the vise. All right, I have the face up on this. I'm going to heat this to a glowing red. That tempers the copper in there so it'll be pliable, and that's how we make the ring. We may have to do this 2 or 3 times during this process. You can see it's getting glowing. Now I'm going to cool it in a thing of water. There's what it looks like now, really black, but it is tempered, or it has loosened it up a little so we can make. Now I have a piece of PVC pipe in my little plastic hammer. We start down with it just to start getting it in shape. You can actually use a little bit bigger hammer on here if you want. Alright, now we're going to go to the board. Alright, I'm shooting for a 6.5, somewhere in there for this ring. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to flatten it out some. You'll see it comes loose. And this is why I use this little block of wood. I will turn it around and I will tap it tight on the... This is just a punch that I'm using it kind of so I don't scratch up my mandrels. And just slowly go around, and each time you hit it, it enlarges the ring itself. When you're making a larger ring, which we're not doing today, you literally drive it down the mandrel. But you got to be sure that the metal has been heated, and otherwise they'll tend to split. Alright, I have made a few things like this block of wood. I made it just to knock this stuff off of the punches. I'm going to use the mandrel now. We're going to see what size it's at. I'm at a 6 right now. I want about a 6 or a 6.5, but to round the corners in my dapping block, I'm going to have to go up to about an 8. So I'll continue with this until it's up to about an 8. I can't see my numbers. I'm about a 7 3/4. Now I'm about an 8. Okay. Let me knock it off of there and we're going to have a look. Alright, as you can see, it's still pretty rough. I'm going to have to put it on the mandrel. I'm going to have to put it on the mandrel to make sure it's nice and round. I'll go ahead and do that this side now. The one thing you don't want to do with these rings is you cannot use anything hard like a hammer directly on them, a steel hammer, because it'll scarf them up. Okay, we're going to go to the drill press. See it, and now it's a little more round, but we'll get it straightened out as we work it down. Alright, I've got paper glued down here. It's 220 grit. The inside edge I sand off. Just make sure it's straight. And that's all there is to it. Alright, this is some auto body sandpaper with a sticky back. I just put it on just a little steel rod. And I'm going to clean out the inside of the ring with that. I just rub it around, and if I go at a little bit of an angle, it cuts off any burrs on either side. kind of hard to see, but there it is, pretty much. Also, this paper is 220 grit. It's pretty heavy. Alright, we're going to heat the ring again. After a while, you have to keep heating it, usually once or twice, or usually twice. It heats up pretty fast and it'll come to a glowing red. We're going to use the dapping block and we're going to kind of round the edges so the ring is rather round. Now, before I do this, what I have to do is put a little bit of wax in the dapping block, this round. That makes it do a much better job. Okay, we're going to use device now. Very important, this operation, that you get this perfectly centered. I have a scrap pile over there where I've failed on a few of them. So you have to line it up perfectly. If you got a lot of money and you got a press, well, that works, but I don't have that, so I use a vise. You line it up perfectly and just put a little bit of a squeeze on it. Then I check it. You can see it's starting to round. Now I'm going to try to do the other side. The other thing that's important is that you do put some wax on there, because it works much better if you wax it. You're less apt to ruin a ring or two, or a quarter or two, I should say. The secret on this, simply get it perfectly centered. I'm getting there, but not quite. I'll have to smooth off that edge just a little bit. The other thing is, my brother-in-law cut me these steel pieces out of steel stock. You can use a socket. You have to get just the right size. Alright, as you can see, I'm getting around, and that's about as good as you can get. And we're going to go on to another step now. Alright, we're going to resize the ring now to make sure it's right at 6.5 the way we want it. As you can see, I got a piece of railroad iron with a hole in it. My father-in-law gave that to me. I'm going to take the mandrel, and on top of the railroad iron, I have this oak board that I cut holes in. I drilled holes in. I'm right at 6 1/4. So we find the right size hole, and we're going to just tap it down to 6 1/2. There's it, 6 1/2. You usually have to go a little bit over that, and we have to check it on the other side. It has to be matching on both sides. This is right at 6 1/2. I'm going to give it just a little bit of a bump. And size-wise, it's set. Now all we got to do is clean it up. It's looking better. The one thing to save the mandrel and to help with your work, if you put a little, I use a candle, and sometimes I can melt it, just put a little wax on the mandrel. You could use oil, but that's just messy. This is real nice this way. Okay, I'm going to clean out the inside edges one more time. Since we used the dapping block, it might have put a little burr on there, so we just want to make sure there's no burrs. You don't want to skin up your finger, and that's all there is to that. Okay, I didn't like the way the ring looked. I wanted it a little rounder to even it up. So we center it up in the dapping block. Hopefully I don't ruin something. It does happen, but it's not nothing that can't be worked out. I think that's about as close as I can get. Okay, I've got around it a little bit more. That's part of this operation is when you're rounding and sizing, you have to just work one back and forth with each other. All right, I'm happy with the roundness of it now. You can see it's almost perfectly round. That's as good as I can get it. Now I'm going to check, and we've lost about a size on the dapping block, so I'm going to wax it up. A little bit of wax, and I'm going to put the board up. Okay. Are you filming?
Yes.
I'm putting the board up, and I'll just do it on the board up here with the dapping block. We're still shooting for 6.5 because that's a pretty common size, but I may only go to 6. Let's see. Because 6 is a pretty common size also. And rather than lose the roundness on the ring, I think I'll go with the 6 rather than the 6.5. So we got it's a size 6 on both edges, and we have almost a perfectly rounded ring. Okay, we're ready to finish it up now. All right, I use Mother's mag and aluminum polish. It seems to work the best. First thing I want to do is, I have this sanding block. I'll take out any little burr on the edge. Both edges. It's quite easy. And you can go around the edge a little bit. You don't have to take too much because we dressed that down in the drill before when we first started. That saves a whole lot of work. All right. This is where it gets messy, so you need an apron or a shirt or something covering, because it'll get a little bit messy. We put a little bit of polish. I got a little buffing wheel on the Dremel, and I'm going to do the inside first. Make sure everything's all right. This takes quite a while, and this is the part that really is amazing. It will really clean up nicely. And I've got to go with, ouch. They get hot too, don't grab them. I'm doing strictly the inside. You do have to keep putting some of the compound on there time to time. Alright, we're going to go for the outside. So you will see it takes I'll go over it once, and I'll go back over it. My wife is my inspector, and so far on the first inspection I haven't passed the test yet. I always have to come back and do more shining or moving or something. She should be an Army sergeant. She's very good at it. Now there is another method you can use. You can shine the inside and just use a little bit of steel wool on the outside, and it will look antique. It won't shine like it does here, but some people prefer the antique look. Why, you can get it by doing that. I'm going for the full shine here. Sounds like a dentist drill, I guess. When you do antique them, the names and numbers and everything stand out a little bit more. But even as the ring gets as you're wearing it and it gets older, they start standing out a little more because of the... Alright, I'm going to shine it with the rag. You don't want to grab it right away though, because they get hot from that. From the Dremel, it gets hot. That buffing wheel gets very hot very fast. Here's the first look of it. And it's a size 6, and it's rounded on the edges, and it'll take more polishing, but you can see there are some of the leaves on the side. Here's the state from which it came, and then it has the date and the states, the time the state became a state. And you can use any one of the state quarters. Alright, I'm going to punch a 7/16 hole with my punch in my quarter. The face down, the ring, part of the ring that's going to show, you put down. And there's what it looks like. This is the face side. This is a Georgia quarter. It has a lot of fancy design on the side. I've made a little air, and everything I've done is by eyeball, and I've got a little bit off center, so I'm going to file this hole out so it's center all the way around. Just a little bit. That way the ring will be very even. Okay, I'm going to file off the edges of this quarter so that the sides are even when the ring is spinning. I just put it on a 7/16 bolt. You can't rush it, you just have to take it one little file at a time. I have to take it down to remove the edge, but I don't want to remove any numbers or names. If I do it with the drill press, it does a lot smoother job. You can do it by hand, but it gets pretty messy and it takes forever to smooth it up. I'm taking the ridge off of the bottom side. I think I got it, but I'll have to check it. Alright, I'm going to stop here and have a look. There's still a little bit of an edge. I have a finer file, and I'll finish it up with this. I'll just touch the bottom edge for smoothness. I'll take my 1200 grit sandpaper and just hit this edge. It'll just smooth it right out, so it's be very smooth when we go to polish the ring at the end. Alright, that's all for that. Alright, I'm going to heat this ring, but as you can see, this is the face side. This is the side of the ring that will show. That will be on the top side. You have to heat them up if you want a nice job. We want it glowing hot, but we don't want to melt it. It will melt. Alright, we've reached that. This ring is going to be larger, so we do a whole lot of tapping on this. First, this is just a punch. I waxed it up so it would slide easier on it. That's as far as I can go with that. Now what I'm going to do is knock it through, and I'm going with going to move down to here. I've turned the quarter over on the dapping block. This is going to be a larger ring, so I'm going to go way up to about a 11 or 12. These will not be able to be rounded as much as other rings. I have to be careful, and we've ruined the ring. I should have heated it some more. We got to start over. This ring split. I went too fast. I should have slowed down, sanded it a little bit inside, and then heated it again before I went to go for the larger size. Okay, I broke the last ring, so this is where I broke. I tried to go too fast. Should have heated it again. When you make the larger rings, you have to go a little bit slower. And if you can see, as I'm pounding on it, it's getting bigger and going up on my punch. I'm going to use the dapping block momentarily, but first I'll have to heat it again. So we'll heat it up and cool it down. We want to get it a nice glowing red. Alright, now I'm going to stick it in the cooling tank. I've got the mandrel here, and I got to put wax. I got to wax it, which I've already done. Now we're going to attempt to do this again without it breaking, hopefully. Got to go to a bigger hole than that. Well, that was too big of a hole. Just slowly tap it down. I have to keep changing the holes because as the ring expands, my mandrel gets stuck in the wood. Now we're going to try to make this around a 10 or 11, something like that. So what I have to do is, now, you have to go up above it. I will try to roll the edges a little bit with the dapping block, but basically it's almost an impossibility on the larger rings. That seems to be as far as I can get with my blocks. I'm up to 11 and a half. I have another block here. Let's see if I've got any different size holes on it. I don't think I do. So I have to go with a larger hole and you can also increase the size by simply tapping it here. to reverse it. Get it around here. I'm at 12. Now I'm at 12 and a half. I'm going to shoot for 13 and hopefully I don't crack it. Alright, there it's sitting on 13, so we're going to go with that. We don't want to risk breaking another ring. As you can see, it gets very, very thin as you get a larger size ring like this. Alright, this is the bigger ring. We're going to clean out the inside of it. And if I do it at an angle thusly, it gets both edges. Want to have no burrs on the inside. Somebody gets stuck with their finger. Alright, that's all of that. Alright, we're going to try to round the edges a little. I put a little bit of wax in the dapping block. We're going to try to equalize this ring, so I use, this is a 7/8 that I happen to have here, the piece that I cut, and we're going to try to round it just a little bit, but like I say, with the bigger ring, you just good chance I could ruin it. I squeeze it down just a little bit. You can see I rounded it a little bit. I may want to go more. Try to even up the sides. The outside of the ring always comes up larger than the inside, so you try to compensate for that with the dapping block. Uh-oh. Now we have a disaster. It jumped off to one side, so it really... Now I have to go. Try again. It's most important that it gets centered, otherwise otherwise you have a terrible mess, and I've got a terrible mess right at the moment. I've got it somewhat squared around, but we will get it. Maybe. I like to do the smaller rings better. The big ones, you get in trouble. So you have to be extremely careful. The ring is kind of out of shape in the dapping block, so we're going to have to go back to the mandrel and get it straightened up again. Alright, we've kind of screwed up the ring, so what I'm going to do is run the dapping block, run it down the block. I'm at a 10 right now. To even it up, I'll do what I did earlier and just enlarge the size. And as you can see, having a little trouble with the holes on the block. If we go too long and do too much of this prying at this stage, I may have to heat it again. I'm at an 11 right now. This will just kind of smooth it off. I'm not going to try to curl the edges again on this because it just don't work very well on the big rings. Like I say, I made these blocks and they're handy sometimes. The big rings are a bit tougher to make and make nice. Okay, I've had to turn the ring over so it gets equal on both sides. It's 11.5 on one side, and I'm going to drive it down to 11.5 on that side. Now it should be matching sides. If I can get it off the mandrel. There we got it. Alright, we're ready for cleanup now. Alright, we run it through the dapping block, then through the mandrel, and now I've got to smooth out the inside edges. There's a little bit of a burr on. Just turn it at an angle on my sandpaper on a stick there. Make sure there's no burrs, because the inspector will catch it. She's vicious. Alright, I'm going to start the polish. This one we're going to show you how we antique them on the outside if you so choose. And if you don't like the antiquing, you can always go back and polish over it. I'm using the Mother's mag and aluminum cleaning polish. And you can see it gets hot. You can see the smoke rolling off of this. It's a pretty thin ring, but I want to do this edge. I'll do both edges and the center, and then we'll antique the very outside. It'll show you what state. I think this is an Illinois coin, I'm forgetting. Once in a while you have to go back and get a little more polish on. I'm only doing the outside edges and then the inside, because we're going to just show you how we antique them a little bit. But we high shine the edges and the inside. We call that good enough. Alright, we're going to show you how you best put a small amount of polish on the outside, a little steel wool. You just have to go around it slow but sure. All the way around. Got to have a little pressure on it. I sometimes do this in the drill press. I put it on some bolts and washers and spin it that way for expedience. Don't always work well, but the other thing you can do is go over it lightly first with a little bit of 1200 grit sandpaper. Just gently, and it'll highlight some of the writing. Now the more, of course, you polish it, the nicer it will look. As you can see, it's dirty work. This is an Illinois quarter, so there's not a lot of design on them. There are stars and then the state. You can see there's where it says Illinois on it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's highlighted. Other thing you can do is just buff it out and it'll be a high shine. I'm going to touch this with just some number 1200 grit sandpaper, just to kind of highlight Illinois on the ring. It also gives you the date that Illinois was established. And Illinois' design has little bitty stars all the way around. If you go all the way around, it will highlight them a little bit. I personally like the high shine on everything, but some people like, okay, some people just like to have it antique where you can see the numbers, but it's a dark. Actually, the ring I'm wearing is partially antique. And that's it for the moment. This is a size 11 and a half.